Good afternoon and welcome back to another rendition of the B&H virtual event space. Today you are tuned into 10 images, 10 stories. Pretty simple, cut and dry. It is what it is. We're going to be looking at some images. Chris is going to be telling some stories. I might have a little input. It's going to be a whole lot of conversation. And if you know Chris and I, there's going to be wisdom. There's going to be lowered blood pressure. There's going to be a lot of relaxing, chillaxing, chilling out. Chris, what's going on, man?
Nothing. This is the best. I love getting to hang out with you, and thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, I think it's fun to tell stories about images and try to do so in a way that transcends the moment. What I mean by that is stories that are relevant to all of us. So hopefully we'll get some of that in here, not just like glory stories like back in the day when I did this. That was amazing, don't you think? No, but like lessons learned, right? And hopefully that's inspiring to people. So
Definitely. Look, even when it's okay to celebrate the greatness, right? Even when
yeah,
sometimes you just got to be like, look, I need my ego stroked because I'm awesome. And look at these images, and that's proof of it right there. It's kind of like you still learn something from it because it inspires people to want to have their images shown up on a screen and have people stare at them in awe, like, oh my God, that's awesome.
yeah, and maybe even also find ways to like reflect back on our work because we shoot so much and capture so much that we forget to pause and think and remember what was the takeaway, why was that image good. And you know this, I used to teach at a brick and mortar photography school for a decade, and one of my colleagues always would say that he felt like he succeeded as a professor when his students would graduate and were able to say, this is a good image, here's why. This is a bad image, here's why. Because too often people are like, that's good, that's bad, but they can't quite tease it out. You know, I'd say the same thing if you're studying cinema or poetry or literature. It's easy to be like let's say the person in the stands, like, that was a great, watching football or something, that was a great pass. And you're like, okay, anyone can do that. But to really understand like why, or to be able to do that yourself is next level. So anyway, that's why I think this kind of
Totally.
stuff is fun.
Totally. It's like dissecting, it's we're dissecting it, but we're also hearing from you. We're not,
Yeah,
we do a lot of critiques on this channel. And the one thing that handicaps us during the critiques is we don't know anything about the artist, the
right.
moment, the image itself, other than what we have there in front of us. So I think it's great to be able to every once in a while look at an image and find out, because how many times have you had this happen, Chris? Someone looks at one of your images and they just go off, it's like, oh, I'm loving this right here. And it just tells in your head, you're just like, oh, I'd never even noticed that. I didn't, it's not what I was going. And you just kind of like, you sit there and you're like, wow. And I'll be honest with you, I'll tell them, yeah, I got lucky. I just threw up my camera. I was actually looking at this over here and this,
Yes.
I mean, sometimes it is intentional. And we talk a lot
Yes.
about intent and purpose in our work, but sometimes it's great to just say, hey, I don't want to hear what you think about the image. I'm going to tell you from the horse's mouth,
Yeah.
this is what I was looking at. This is what was happening. And I just think regardless, sometimes it's not a cool story. Sometimes it's a great image. And you're just like, yeah, this is what happened. I had 5 minutes in and out. But I think those are even important, right? Because you
Right.
can't enjoy the sweet without the sour. You have to
Yeah.
hear about the boring moments. You have to hear about the failures to really appreciate those moments where you're like, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened. This happened, this came together, and then this person came out of nowhere, and next thing you know,
Right.
or so.
Right. Right. That
But
reminds me of, I wish I had pulled one of these images. Is last week I did a shoot and I was in a real hurry to get to it, long story. And I packed my camera bag like too fast, like I shouldn't have. And I packed a 16 to 35 instead of a 24 to 70. And I'm there and I start shooting. I'm like, man, what is going on? Like, why does this all look so wonky and so wide and everything? And I'm just shooting, trying to figure it out. And I'm like,
you're
changing,
zoomed
whatever.
in.
Yeah. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I literally brought the wrong lens for this. And then it's like, okay, drop in to 1635, meaning like, like in skateboarding, like when there's a ramp, you like drop in, you commit, you're like, I'm, and when you drop in on a skateboard ramp, like a half pipe, if you don't fully commit, you just eat it really hard. And because you have to like, it's counterintuitive. You have to like lean forward to make the drop. So it's like lean in, lean forward, and this is what I have to work with, and end up creating some great images. I still wish I had the 24 to 70, but I made a mistake, and it's like, what do you do with mistakes, right? And so that's part of, I think, the narrative of all of our image making is sometimes we make mistakes, in this case gear, or sometimes there's happy accidents, like you shoot something. I don't know if this has happened to you, but like where you know, your focus is off or something, and it's like, wow, that's like really better, but it was like a mistake.
Happened the other day. It's like soft, it was like soft focus. And I'm like, I couldn't perfect soft focus if how many times am I like, I see someone else do soft focus. I'm like, wow, that's cool. It's like actually kind of more
Yeah,
evocative, but I can never do it unless I do it on accident. And I'm like, oh, what was I looking at? Or, you know, it's really, it's good when it's the right kind of soft focus, not when
yes.
it's out of focus and you're like, oh, this is great, I have soft focus. And then you look at the background, it's like, oh, but that sign 30 feet behind them is perfectly sharp.
Yeah, that's true. Or I've had the ones where like you compose things accidentally wrong. So like if it were me, like the person's face is like cut off like this or something, and it's a total accidental shot, but you're like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Edgy.
You know, like, because I kind of compose kind of traditionally, you know, like more
Yeah,
more
same
straightforward.
way.
But so composition, yeah, like focus, shutters, or ISO sometimes, like you you know, make a mistake with that and you're like, oh, it's kind of gritty. Ooh, that's sort of cool. And of course the opposite happens. So you're like, oh my gosh, I ruined that image because
Totally. But
so,
these are the important conversations to have, because at the end of
yeah,
the day, it's great for people out there. You never know who's watching or listening, and they just picked up photography, and somebody at every given moment is that person who's like,
yeah,
wow, I thought professionals had it all figured out. And it's,
right.
you know, that was one of my most transformational moments. Was, I tell this story all the time, being on a magazine cover shoot. We were actually shooting two magazine covers for two summer editions of a magazine, and I was assisting one of my original mentors, who was a big commercial and fashion photographer. And for him to turn to me and be like, so what should I do? What do you think? Like, what do you tell? And I'm just like, wait, hold on. Like, you mean you're like really like, I'm holding a
Yeah,
reflector for you. And it
right.
was at that moment where I'm like, you go in with the plan, and sometimes the plan doesn't work, or sometimes you just kind of are
Right.
like, you know, I think we'll kind of go in this direction, and you get there and you're like, yeah, we need to pivot. You know, that's when you know, that
Right.
first time of figuring out that professionals are professional problem solvers. That's what we
Mhm.
are. We find ways to navigate, and we find ways to, you know, another great mentor of mine says, difference between an amateur and a professional is an amateur can go out and take a good picture, but a professional knows they're going to go out and take a good picture. And just knowing that you have what it takes to get a great image no matter what, that confidence, that experience, that all kind of builds together.
I love that. Maybe I'm not a professional then because I don't always know I'm gonna get it.
You've been talking to me too much. You're supposed to be rubbing off on me. I'm not supposed to be
I'm
rubbing off
like,
on
oh
you.
no. I'm like, maybe all this has been, maybe I really am a fraud. No. Because, let me go there for a second. I think embracing uncertainty for me is the path forward. So I think, and I guess I do deeply know, like, hey, I can find something, something's going to work. But it's actually, it's kind of funny. It's not like blind confidence. And I don't think maybe you're saying that, but it's more like, okay, I have no clue, but I do know, like even 16 to 35, when I had that lens, which I didn't want, I'm like, okay, I do know how this lens works. I do know its sweet spot. I do know its strengths. I know that camera height really, really matters. I know that distance to subject and subjects, there's three people, really, really matters. And so I was like, but I don't, I have to change my vision for what I thought I had in mind. I can adapt. I'm good at adapting. So maybe my confidence is in my agility, adaptability, versus in like, and that maybe that does lead me to getting the shot. So maybe I do have that confidence,
Yeah.
but maybe part of my process is embracing uncertainty and just being like, okay, or like that guy you're assisting, he's like, what should I do? And allowing, I think as photographers, allowing ourselves that space, because that's where the solutions emerge. A lot of times, you know, sometimes you fight for it and you're just like, and then other times it's a little more of a flow, curiosity, like, huh, what should I do? And I think like for me, the moment when I looked down and I realized I had the wrong lens, I didn't beat myself up. I wasn't like, oh, yeah, I'm such an idiot. And, and it was more like, oh, how funny, like, thank you, universe, curveball. Okay. And even like, you're telling me I can handle a curveball. All right, let's handle this curveball. Let me see if I can, hit this one out of the park. And it ended up working really well. Got some amazing images that I hadn't anticipated. So that's a tangent, but
Yeah.
that's related.
No, totally, totally. It always works out. And I think the ends justify the means. It doesn't matter, I guess,
Yeah.
why you're confident or how confident you are, but just knowing, like you just said, you have the sum of all the parts. You have everything there. You know all the information. You know the lens. You have the experience behind you. Okay, I've been in a situation before where I have to work in a 6x6 room with no light. That's why experience, I think, is king or queen, because being there before, just knowing I've done this before, I got this, I'm gonna come up with something because I know the technical part and I know how to make it work. So
yeah,
let's
let's
dive
do it.
in, man. Let's look at
dive
some
in.
images.
Let's share some images. Let's get to some
Totally.
photography. Enough of this talking, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'll go to there's one. You know how this is supposed to be 10 images, Derek, and one. Can you see my screen too?
We got like 10A and 10B, right? 10A.
Oh yeah, dude. No, I have like more than 10.
Oh no, we're good. We're good.
We're expanded. So this is, I'm shooting with a 4x5 camera. It's wood and brass, and I'm photographing this world champion surfer, and it's type 55 Polaroid. So this is obviously back a while back, but the reason why I wanted to share this is there's these two images kind of together. They're in the same moment. And I probably only took these two because when you're shooting with that kind of film and that kind of way, that's all you can't like shoot a lot. And they're important to me for a couple of reasons, and it's kind of stories behind them. One is, in this case, you can tell lower camera position, horizon line, it's hitting around the waist. And so he's kind of looking down at the camera, and we're at this beach. It's an important beach, and all these different things. And this is sort of a pulled back perspective. And then this one's the up close. And the year before this picture, even less than a year, Sean had lost his teenage son to a tragic accident. So he's incredibly strong and handsome and accomplished and world-class in so many ways, but there's also sadness and grief and loss. And for me, this is one of these really pivotal turning points in my images where I started to realize that good songs, good stories, good poetry, good photographs, they contain multiple emotions at once. It's not just like happy and done, or strong and that's it, or heroic and that's it. They can have multiple things. It also really revealed to me that I love working up close. Like this image, I don't even really like. And I think that was another indicator to me, and still is, I need to work on in my environmental portraits more. But
what didn't you like about it? Or you still don't like it?
Yeah, I still don't like, like if I were to deconstruct it, if we were to like crop out, and I could do this maybe, let me just go out of full screen for a moment. We're just in Lightroom here. Let's see if it will.
I love that I've seen the other image of him.
Yeah.
I've never seen this one.
Yeah. And then it has a little kind of like sepia toning. Ooh, I actually like it cropped like that. Whoa, that's interesting. I didn't mean to do that. But now I'm up close, right? But I do like that a lot better. So let me go back to the real, there's a little bit of lag on my Lightroom right now for whatever reason, but let's just go here. The crop isn't perfect, but you get the idea. Trying to remove the framing or the rebate edge of the film and all that stuff. So I think that part of what I don't like is it just doesn't, like, there isn't enough like balance to it. Like even there's that little shrub off to the side of him. Like that doesn't, I don't know. It just kind of like, to me, this feels like the puzzle piece that looks like it should fit, but it doesn't fit. And this is back to the question. I should be able to say, why don't I like it? So I like that you put me on the spot. And if I had to just distill it, the feeling isn't there. The hands are like kind of too deep in the pockets. I mean, he does have like that intensity and that presence, and the environment and the location is right, but it's like all the right elements are there except like the secret magic sauce of feeling, and so it just doesn't feel right. Where I go to that other image, and that one you have this really connectedness, and I think maybe too, like in the other one, he's looking down at us, camera's low. In order to do that, camera probably should have been a little higher. This one, you can tell the camera is like really eye to eye, so it's like ratcheted up the tripod, and really like I'm under the dark cloth and I'm looking, and we're like really having like a magical, deep, soulful connection. And this will forever be one of my favorite portraits. And also I feel like, because I feel so highly about him, this is one of the first times I photographed someone that was celebrated in some way, and I feel like this honors him. Where the other one, I feel like it's okay. Shadows around his eyes are too dark. You kind of lose the eyes. Hands in the pockets aren't great. I didn't really know about those kind of things yet. Camera height's probably too low. So all those things just come together to kind of take away feeling a little bit. Is that fair?
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. You had a reason for everything. It wasn't just like, I just don't like. And I love how you broke down the reasoning. It's also interesting how I look at it completely differently. And I think I mean, that's inherent in us as artists.
Yes, yeah.
We're looking at every little thing, like the things that bother us. And generally it's kind of the same things. You know, there's certain themes I'm sure that you have in images that like, okay, this really bothers me. This certain aspect has to really be on. I think that this is such a strong image that it's natural to want to compare it to the other image. I think both are great images on their own. When you compare them, it's just that expression for me. That's that. I tell you, every time we speak about your work, you always seem to capture that right moment where the expression is just, it's like you could just look in, like he's piercing you with his eyes. And I think that's the one main thing. I actually love the composition. I love how it's like kind of just like a casual image. I think it definitely fits in the right context.
Yeah.
The other image is just so strong, and it's so focused on his expression, and it's the right expression, and just everything's nailed, that it's really just, it's hard to put the two next to each other in a comparative fashion. I think one complements the other.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and I think probably, you know, I kind of abandoned this image. I'm getting it better. You know, you can kind of see as I'm doing post-production, like I'm getting a little more of his eyes in there, brightening it up. I think it was just a little too gritty, grainy, a little too, like that's just too dark. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like I needed to open it up a little more. It's not quite perfect yet, but yeah, but fun. So that's, you know, let's call that image 1. Is that fair?
Perfect.
Can we go to image 2 and tell a story?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So this one, and I've told this story before, but I wanted to come back to it because I think it's relevant. And this is the guy I'm going to be photographing, you know, or I'm actually waiting to photograph a ballerina. This is at Land's End in San Francisco, right above the Sutro Baths. You can see the fog in the background a little bit. And I think a lot of times what we do as photographers is we see a scene. This is not the good picture, but I'm leading to it. But like just random people or random stuff. And what we do as photographers is we find, you know, the thing amongst the thing. So it's kind of like Where's Waldo? I feel like I'm often playing that game in real life. And so like in what's most important to me, and, you know, this goes back to Proust, that we don't need to see new things, but we need to have new eyes. And so it's like, it's not what's in front of us, but it's how we're seeing what's in front of us. And so I approach him and we talk, and this is the first image. And I don't usually share this one, but I want to share kind of process. This is the first image I took. And then I'll get to the second one, and then I'll put them maybe both side by side. And this is the one that I really like. So I'll exit out of full screen mode for a moment. and kind of go into these, and there's a little bit of process here with this kind of stuff, and just dim the lights down maybe. So in this case, the first image, and Derek, you've heard me tell the story before, but the guy, I'm just talking to him and I ask about his interests, and he's like, oh, I'm a writer. And suddenly I felt like I could identify with him, and he was a writer without a home versus a homeless person. And I, as a writer, can identify with that. Not that I've been homeless, but that I can identify with feeling like I'm on the fringe of society, or I don't fit in, or whatever. And I fully believe in photography, or in portraiture, we want to look so deeply into someone else that we see ourselves. And so the first attempt on the left, it was all that fog was behind him. So the sea, his back is to the sea. And that's just how I happened to like approach him and start chatting. And the wind is sort of blowing his hair forward. And so he looks a little bit like a crazy person to me. And he was a little bit crazy, probably. And so to me, that, like, I couldn't really identify with that. And so then I had to say, would it be okay if we like switched positions and you stand over here? And so whenever you have that moment of asking someone to do things, it's hard as a portrait photographer, especially for strangers, whether it's a celebrity or a stranger or whatever, but trusting your inner instinct. So this photo for me, the reason why I want to share that is it was about like, yes, Chris, trust your gut. Don't just get the photo of the guy looking sort of crazy, but then have him stand there with the trees in the background. So we get those tones. And then also I know what wind's going to do with hair, and I know which direction it's blowing. And then you also can just see so much more of, you also see I changed my camera height too, right? So and this is subtle, but the one on the left, the camera's a little too low looking up at him. The one at the right, now we're like soul brothers. We're like eye to eye. We're like fellow humans on this journey we call life, kind of a thing. And I really love that aspect of that image. So there's that one. And then we can chat about those or anything that comes up.
Yeah, no, I think everything you said is right on. And I see it in looking at the images side by side, even just like the expression, that the eyes and the eyebrows for me.
Yeah. Huh.
You look at how the eyes and the eyebrows change really from below there. The mouth is kind of the same.
Yeah.
He's a little more the head on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really about the eyes and the eyebrows for me.
Yeah. And that he's more settled in the other one. So he's more kind of like surprised about the picture. And that's fine, but it's more fun and jovial a little bit,
And the angle really makes a difference, I think.
Yeah.
In this one, it's like when you really have that eye level nailed, and you're really like looking into someone's eyes versus it's almost like it's not a big distraction, but it's a slight distraction sometimes. You feel like you're looking up at somebody versus looking right into their eyes.
And in this case too, I'm going more with like the way Steve McCurry composes his portraits. Not totally, but he does like to have his eyes in the center of the frame. He does like to have the dominant eye in the actual center. So it's a little closer to that. And then post-production, this one is black and white, just because I didn't like spend time on it because I didn't like it. But the fog in the background is just like a bright white sky. And then this other one, you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but I blurred out the bottom of the frame just a little bit. So it created a little bit more of that, like this mood, and it's subtle. So hopefully people don't really tune into that. I tried to make it look like that is matching the shallow depth of field of the camera. But this one, you like see all of the jacket. It's everywhere. This one, it kind of drifts away. So we're able to hang up here.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm a hawk for post-processing blur and post-processing vignetting when they're too heavy-handed. It's like one thing it's one of my sticking points. I can't get past that. Once I see it, I can't look at anything else. My eye stays there. And I didn't even, now that I look at
now you can see it's like obvious.
Well, it's still not even obvious. I mean, it still has it fits the look of the shallow depth of field, but this is the perfect selling point for why you know, why and when to go to a shallow depth of field. And it's not about, oh, look, everything else is out of focus. No, it's done with intent.
Right.
And it's not, you know, it's not so shallow. There's still that detail there, but it just brings your eye directly to the center of the frame where it should be.
Yeah, and thank you, and his scarf was bright red, so I changed that. I removed that color because we just and it's obviously a very muted color palette, but for me, like that sense of loss and longing, and his eyebrows, like, dude, these are the best eyebrows ever. I mean, come on. And it's like I let's see if we can zoom in on him a little bit more. That could be a cool crop too, a little bit more up close. But you just, for me, like, I mean, I know this will sound wacky, but I feel like this is like who I'm turning into. This is who I'm growing up to be. Like, there's some kind of wisdom. There's some kind of like, and not that I want to be a homeless person, but I want to, like, the freedom of, like, I don't know, just being deeply human and not caring, I guess. Like, I just went and got my hair cut last week, and they like trimmed my eyebrows. So I'll never grow my eyebrows out that long. But I kind of wish I would. I kind of wish I would have that freedom to just be fully, I don't know, in those elements. So there's something, I guess, like that with images, when I'm photographing people, I'm looking for what is the wisdom they have to teach me. And that comes from all genders, all ages, all ethnicities, all walks of life. And so that, to me, makes it a good portrait. And I think back to, trying to make this relevant to other people is looking at technical things or blur, vignette, or whatever. And we'll see one probably that has a lot of vignette, and we'll see if Derek likes it or not. But learning from our pictures, like letting them be mentors to us. And if we can do that, boom, we've talked about this before, but that's magic. So how about I keep going, and we'll keep hitting a few more images. I may jump out of order a little bit, but I'm going to stay here. I'm in the same area, and I could pick so many different images, but I just am randomly picking this for the fun of what I want to kind of create a thread for what we're talking about. But this was the ballet dancer for San Francisco Ballet that I was photographing, and it was really cold out, as you can see, and she was freezing. And so at one point I just said, the ballet stuff isn't working. Why don't you put on your jacket? And this was kind of the first jacket photo, and it's just so corny and cheesy and goofy and all of that. But it's, it's obviously leading somewhere, which to me, it's leading to this moment. And this one, this is where you can judge me on my vignette. No, I'm just kidding. But it even this, though, it is very intentional. Like, it's stronger over here versus it is over on the bright side. I, just asking her to look away from the camera, and maybe if it's not quite so black in the background, we can kind of see the image better. But this image, what the lesson it's teaching me, and there were other portraits from this moment that I like as well, but was like, sometimes you just can't force it. Like, we did the ballet stuff, and there was some good ballet stuff, but at one point she was just freezing, and it was like, okay, this isn't worth it to see a freezing ballerina in a beautiful location. And so that one, the takeaway for me and the sharing is just being, again, that adaptability or being adaptable, agile, and really, tuning into what it is we're photographing. These happen to be portraits. That's what I selected. I could have selected other images, but because sometimes it happens, you want to go photograph the landscape, and then the sunset isn't good, and you're like, okay, I can't change that. What do I do? With people, I think it's even more so. We want to control and change and modify and direct, and that's part of our job. But at some point, we have to say, like, okay, plan A, nope, plan B. And so that's what that one is.
Totally. And I think the vignette works here because it fits in. Sometimes you just, when you see something that's like, it just egregiously, it's out of place. Yes. And yes. I think and we've all done it, but oh, totally. If you guys have seen my old work, if you want to see some really, really, really bad post-processing, I'll show you. Because the background is dark and it fits it should look effortless, and it should look like there's a nice fall off there. So it's,
Yeah.
it fits.
Yeah, and this one obviously too, post processing aside and all that, but is like going from like like she was just so happy. She was just like so goofily happily that where she was like he got to put on her coat. But then you can still go soulful, and you can still find those things. I'll jump to another one. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this one is Jack O'Neill, and he's often credited with as the guy who invented the wetsuit. And this is at his home in Santa Cruz, and not a great picture. And that's why I'm showing it first. You guys are kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit. I'm just so excited to be in his presence, and so excited to like this is a really like significant moment in my life. That I love surfing, and the first wave I caught is right in front of his house, and he has an eye patch. I mean, he's just like he like all the right things, but this is like the worst photo. It's like, and what I hadn't realized was he he wasn't very mobile at the time. He's pretty old, and so he couldn't stand for very long, and so he just was like kind of sitting on the back of a couch, and I just was like, I got to take a picture, and it got to like you got to get the first shot out of your system and just try. And one of the things we can see in his sunglasses, let's see if I can just zoom in, but you can see that's the opposite zoom in. Let's see if we can go the other way. Um, um, Come on, Lightroom. I don't know why I'm kind of stalling here, but here we go. One, everything about this picture is bad, right? I mean, so just that's fine. But you can see like out here, I'm going to photograph him right there. There's like a little opening on his patio, and you can see that's like the ocean in the background. You can see there's beautiful window light coming in on the picture. So that's probably what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. And I was probably so focused on him that I was ignoring all the clutter in the background. And that happens a lot when we photograph people we admire, we respect, that are beautiful, handsome, striking. We zero in on the person and we like forget the frame. and then for whatever, hopefully we're like, okay, do the work of a photographer, and I'll go to the next one, which is a photo I really like. Wow. And this is out there on that patio. I asked him to remove his sunglasses, which was again an ask. I didn't want him to change wardrobe. I didn't want him to fix hair. And in this case, right before this, I'd asked him about his eye patch and noticed that it was made out of wetsuit material. And I kind of very goofily said like, oh, I noticed, it's that your eye patch is made out of neoprene and wetsuit material. And like, why is that? Dumb question. But he's all, how else would I keep my eye socket warm when I'm surfing? And I was like, right. But just, he's on that patio. And so then I'm finding the spot for him to sit and using light. And then I do have him looking at the frame, but for some reason I like the moment of him looking away. I think when he was looking at the camera, there was just sort of a nervousness in the shot, which I didn't like. And then if we go back, kind of like this from like, that just kind of looks like an old guy slumped on the back of a chair and there's a bunch of stuff, who knows what, but this is more like, yeah, this is Jack O'Neill. And finding ways to tell the story, to honor the person, to pay attention to the whole frame. And I have versions of this image in color and other different moments from this that I like as well. But, it was more than a 2-image shoot, but it was probably, like a 10-image shoot. It wasn't like a lot, but again, wanted to share this because it's this illustration of process and allowing the process, allowing, like, to me, and Derek, we've talked about this before, but I'm like, as photographers, be like so in the moment that whatever is capturing your eye, like, yes, let it light you on fire, whatever. Like, I'm in Jack O'Neill's presence, like, oh my gosh, like, take the picture, like, this is amazing. Then do the work. And those are two different sides. And most people in the world are so excited, they see something, they snap with their phones or whatever. They're not taking the next 2 or 3 steps, or maybe back to the ballerina. they're like, she's happy and goofy. This is all I got. Like, let's do happy and goofy versus like, do the work, bring them where you want to be. Or with the homeless guy, in that case, that one was like, he looked a little kind of, to me, kind of crazy versus like I didn't have this deep human connection yet. So I needed to cultivate that. So cultivate the connection. Or the Sean Thompson, I did the far away image first. Also, I should say that was the first time I ever used a 4x5 camera. So I was like way out of my element. And I had a friend helping me, which was great, one of my students. But I did the shot away from him because I was so nervous to be close to him, because I was like, this guy's a legend and he's like a world champion. And so I was like, kind of like gave him his distance. And then I like had the guts to move in close. So it was the first time I think in my life I had that kind of guts. And I was like, oh, this is where I like to be. And you can see that, that came into this photo too. So, the kind of the narrative I'm stitching together here and sharing some of these images is that, and kind of following our intuition. And it's other people might say like they get close, because I have students who get closer and like, ooh, I don't like that closeness. I want more of the scene to tell the story. And I'm like, okay, pay attention to that. What is it about the scene? How do you arrange the scene? Like, or even with this one with this guy, Jack, if he was my student, I would say, what could you have done differently? Maybe if you had, rather than have the surfboard right behind him, if you had had the wall, maybe if rather than the TV in the shot, you composed it, a little cleaner. And maybe rather than like the trash on the table or whatever that stuff is, maybe you used his back to block that. You know what I mean? You can work that. So I'm not saying, and I'm never saying be a photographer like me, because the world doesn't need another duplicate of any one of us humans. But what we need is to really find our own voice, our own way of telling stories. And that comes from something within us, and paying attention to that. And when we can do that, we have the opportunity for something magical to happen.
Totally. And I love, here's my takeaway from this one before we move on. My takeaway is this. Number one, I think what you were saying, that whole piece about not being, how many people are content with just one thing, that whole idea of just working a subject and trying to get more out of it, and really stopping. And it's great to be immersed in the moment. But I love what you said, because we always talk about immersion and that's it. Immerse yourself. Boom. There you go. You're good. No, you have to come back out. Jump in the water. Jump in the water, acclimate to the cold, and then get out of the water and get your bearings and say, okay, boom, cool. Shot this person. I'm in their presence. I'm enamored. That's great. Okay. How do I take this image to the next level and not just be content with, okay, I got a picture and it's in focus and they're smiling or they're doing this. I think what's so great about these examples of showing, if you would have just told us about, oh, hey, if you just showed us the after and just said, hey guys, this, I did take a shot at first and you described it, no matter how well you describe it, it just doesn't tell us.
You can't see how bad it is.
No, you just can't see, like you can't translate like how different that shift is, and I look at, it's funny, you said I'm very much like you. It's like traditional portraiture. I'm not the person that's like, oh my God, how did they think to do that? That's super cool. No, I'm like, most of my stuff is just like, okay, let's find good light, get the right moment, get interaction. And it's just going to be your classic portraiture. What I love is that you left the hair the same, that you didn't snap the pockets down. It's all the stuff that like I would have been in there. And it's like, the fashion part of me is like, oh, all right, I got to make sure the collar is straight and everything's good. And I'm like focusing on all this stuff that I think it matters, because in my head, I've told myself time and time again that it matters. Right. And I actually think it adds to the image. It's him. And I think it's unequivocally him. And the moment is candid and natural in the sense of you didn't over direct, you didn't over sculpt. You did what you needed to do and then just let the moment be itself, which I think is beautiful.
And then, and also at the same time, because sometimes I'll get pushback, like at the same time I do stuff and people are like, well, that's not authentic, because I'm all about like authentic portraits. Like I had him take his glasses off. And I also had like on his right ear, so the ear turned away from us, he has a hearing aid. and I didn't want, and it's a very like visible big hearing aid,
Mhm.
and I didn't want that in the image because it made it like the way I posed him and all the stuff like you're saying, it feels very timeless to me. Like you're like, oh, also I should say I did remove the logo from his shirt, even though it was O'Neill, which is like, so like you can see right here. Well, we can't zoom in, but right here it says like O'Neill Surf. Right here, that's gone. So I do remove things, and people are like, well, that's not authentic. And why I did that is whenever you have type or you have a hearing aid or things that are like those become really important parts of the story. And I like to really reduce and simplify. Also, sunglasses just create this distance from him. And it was uncomfortable for him to like be in the bright light with those off, when you get older and your eyes are sensitive. So it's in all these situations, where it's uncomfortable to ask a stranger to say like, actually, I just said I could take your portrait, but that didn't work. Can we try it again, but over here? Whenever you do that, or with the first one, can I move up close? I know I was farther away, whatever. Like those little things are incredibly important, and finding like the guts and the connection to self to make those decisions, because that's really what does make or break it. I mean, to compare it, if we are doing fashion, yeah, you got to have all the little details right, and that's what makes a good fashion photo. In portraiture, those details are different, but they're still details, and they're immensely important to the whole process. So it's fun to like, I think to bring that up, because sometimes people look at my photos and they'll just be like, wow, like you just kind of, and they'll see me shoot and they're like, wow, you just kind of like walked up and took the picture. And I'm like, yeah, I did. But there's all this going on in my head and all this going on that I'm seeing, even like where I had him sit, like the background, how it's like, the shape of the background pointing down towards his head, um, where horizon lines are or aren't, where what, this essentially is split lighting. It's brighter on one side and darker on another. Which way is the brightness? So it's brighter on his patch side, patch eye turned towards me, anyway, all those things are actually like part of the magic of all of this. So the details do matter. It's not just like, oh, walk in and take a picture, even though I do that. And it's letting it it's just being, what is it, it's just being soulful, and it's like really like let's make art, let's make this timeless, let's make this
Yeah,
amazing. So
mission accomplished.
yeah, okay, let me see what I should jump to right now.
And we're not keeping count. So if
We're
we don't
not
get
keeping
to
count. Yeah,
specific,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
we're getting bonus here, because I actually love the dynamic that you're coming into this with showing
yeah,
the different examples.
yeah. And let's go to one. How about we'll go to we'll just jump to a different little scenario. This is a workshop, and I'm just talking about photographing someone's Broadway performer, and he's sitting, there's probably like 15 people behind me, and he's just kind of like, you can tell like, what do we call this? This is almost like the zombie stare or something, where it's just like, and then there's kind of like the goofball, and you can kind of see my setup. I had someone holding a piece of black foam core, you can't really see it, but on top, like above, and I just had a piece of black fabric, and then I have an open door, and he's like looking at the open door. And so the overall process, kind of do that is this, um, and leading into kind of, and maybe I should do the end picture, because it's, who knows what the best way is to do this, but when you get this, you get, at least for me, deep connection. Stylistically, the post-production here, it's more dramatic, and I'm like really listening to the moment to figure out how to do that. The light is the brightest area is his face, and so I'm kind of darkening other areas. And then it is kind of cinematic processing a little bit. There's some kind of blue-green stuff going on, so it's minimizing color palette. But there's this real eye-to-eye connectedness. The catch light in the eye is immensely important. His internal state's really important. his ears and brightness on ears are really important. I like to darken ears a little bit. I mean, that's taking a page out of Dan Winter's book, and his is, he flags off ears with his lighting so that, because they catch light. And so if I'm using natural light, sometimes I'm paying attention to how I don't want like a big source of light here, because ears are just weird in general. So like that, and all that does is it brings us right into his face. And so part of this narrative is post-production, but part of it is like where someone starts, what maybe they think that they need to give you. And you can also tell them like kind of like, how am I doing this, and what's the background, and the background, the light on the background is just coming in from having really like just an improper background. And so you actually, I think it might have even been, I spray painted a foam core with chalk paint, and then put some chalk on it. So that's kind of why it has some light and bright. And then there's, but basically you can create imperfections a lot of ways. Maybe I was trying to demonstrate like really like a hack, and just like someone sitting on a box towards a window, put this thing up, and it was, now that I see it, I'm remembering it was chalk. Sorry, I forgot. But then how do we get them to that spot? And in this case, I mean, not all my portraits are like this, but it's again that eye to eye. Again, there's a connection between us, and the connection came from like talking deeply about some stuff, and then it gets there. So a lot of times people are like, oh, like that's cool, how do you like do that, and it's just this, it's like, those little things, and then you get there. And what I might have done too on the last one, I'm like, sometimes I do this, like I think when I original crop, it didn't have enough headroom, so I like added some more space on the top in Photoshop. And I'll do that a lot if I feel like my spacing's off, because I don't always nail it on camera. So
you totally, I mean, that's the best angle for him. It's a different person.
mm-hmm.
The guy in the first two images is not the guy in the third. Like he's transformed him completely. Like his jaw, I think everybody, when you think models, right, you think like defined cheekbones and defined jaws.
Yeah.
And just the expression, it's always that expression for me. Again, I'll say it again.
Yeah.
You always nail expression. They just give this like they're looking through you in like this mysterious way that makes you want to know more. But everything's just so strong.
Yeah, doesn't he feel strong? Like here he feels slouched. He's slouching.
Yeah, he's slouched. He actually, when I saw that one, I'm over here and I'm like, wait, I gotta sit up straight.
Yeah, I know. But then last one, I get him in that posture, and he's embodied like his like inner strength, and he's just.
It's that exact same impact as the other portrait I said, where you look like you're looking. I feel like I'm like nose to nose looking right in the eye.
Yeah. And there's like this, I mean, what I'm trying to do a lot of times is not like over glamorize or over make people overly heroic or overly beautiful. Which is like, it's like easy to like make people look beautiful and hot and sexy or something, whatever. Not easy, but actually I do think it's easier. It's harder to do this kind of stuff because you're finding this line where it's a little bit like he's not smiling, he's not goofing around, he's not like looking stoically off in the distance. You either get this or you completely miss it, so it's like all or none. And so I like those kind of moments. I like that kind of shooting. I like, and the other example, same kind of thing, right, where you get that. And I love, in saying all this too, part of, this session is sponsored by Sony, and I'm a Sony ambassador. And one of the things I love about Sony is that they embrace all types of photographers, and their ambassador program. There's people who maybe in the program would love this photo, and other people would be like, man, he looks so distant and sad or melancholy or something. And I would be like, yeah, well, tell me about that. What do you like to do? And the reason I'm maybe bringing that up is, as I'm sharing these stories, it's never about doing what I'm doing. If this is my process of 1, 2, 3, it's about you, Derek, or anyone listening, all of us finding our own 1, 2, 3 process. Like we're there in the moment. Okay, that didn't work. That didn't work. Oh my gosh, this does work. And embracing that this thing we call photography is a process, and sometimes it's lucky, sometimes it's accidental, sometimes it's intentional. um, it's all craft, it's all art, and it all really comes from us inside, ultimately combining and connecting with the gear we're using, the moment, and then the subject matter, whether it's a tree, person, whatever. And that is, I think that's the most important takeaway, at least when I see other people's work, is, maybe it's like, let me just go to Olympics or something. You see an Olympic runner or whatever do something great. It's like, well, that's neat to see them run fast. But what was their training regimen like, right? How did they get there? Because it's like the end result does, I mean, it's cool. It's like, well, I want to run fast. And it's like, okay, or I want to take great pictures, because I do a lot of mentoring and stuff. They're like, I want to do that. And it's like, okay, great. Let's like, there's a process and we can get you there. And then a lot of people are like, ooh,
I want to do the work.
I didn't realize it was so hard. I just thought you walked around in natural light and you just took pictures. And I'm like, well, I do. And it is hard, but it's worth it. It's amazing. It's rewarding and all that.
Totally. Look, hard work. I was just having this conversation this morning with somebody. There's no substitute. There's no substitute. If you don't work hard for it, it's not sustainable. You can't sustain with luck.
Yeah.
And you don't appreciate something that isn't earned. You just appreciate it differently. And it makes you work harder when you see what you have to go through to get something like this. And so many people are just, how many people would be content with either of the two left images? And it's really, we're having that wherewithal to just be like, nope, not content. I can do better. I got to do better.
I love the way you say that. Yeah. Who is it? Some famous inventor, maybe Edison, said that discontent is a necessity of innovation. I think it was Thomas Edison who said that. But yeah, I think in paying attention to that, and that's tuning into that internal heart space, compass, whatever, your soul. But to be like, yeah, no, like, and to trust that, and to not be hard on yourself, not be like, I'm horrible, or if only someone else was here, they could do better, or if only I had this lens, or if only I had this light, or if only whatever, if only this guy had better, if only this guy had like brushed his hair, versus like, I'm so glad he didn't brush his hair. And if only he wasn't so slouchy, it's like, okay, I don't like that he's slouchy. Pay attention to that. How do I get him here? How do I like mirror that? How do I talk about that? How do I, all those things. Yeah, so totally. Let's keep going. Does that sound good?
Let's go.
Okay. So these are not going to be sort of our before and afters. These are more iterations on a theme. Maybe we'll just go through a couple moments here. And then this one, I think is like a single image I've like made the most money off of, and which is interesting. And so that's why I kind of want to include these. And there's just a little mini set. I feel like I should crop this one to kind of match the others a little bit. You can see the original crop there. But let me try to, it won't be exact, but we'll be a little closer. There we go. And maybe I should go back to that one real quick. We're freestyling, Derek. We always freestyle. Okay, here it is. You can see this is a parking lot, and there's a white wall, and we're just walking through this in downtown Santa Barbara where I live, and there's a white wall, and then there's a building that's another white wall, and so there's like white light bouncing around in this space. And for me, I'm just like, yes, this is the ticket. I'm loving everything about that. This one, maybe what I should do too is let's see what it looks like. This is what it looked like maybe in camera, and then this one looks like I brightened it up. And this one wasn't necessarily one of my like all-time keepers, but you get the idea. So there's a little bit of post-production in all of these. This one needs some work on its color, so we're going to ignore that. This one I actually like its color, bright, warm, nice blue in the eyes. And then this one I love as well. And she was just totally not into this at all. Kind of like, Chris, you're a crazy person. Like, why are we like taking a picture right here in this parking lot? There's like a car on one side of her, and
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, stand over there by like the thing that like stops the car where you park. And she's like, okay, but then talk with her and get her to the right place and talk about where she's from. She's from Russia, and just different things, and then create these different moments. And then also in this case, like, letting the hair be the hair as well, and going with the fact that I don't tend to really like people when they wear, I should say that. I don't tend, I was gonna, I like people, I like all people. It's not super fun to shoot or photograph people when they're wearing bright white, because it's like hard, it's like the white catches so much.
Mhm.
So I'm not like super like, yay, a white turtleneck. But then I'm like, ooh, a white turtleneck, white on white, like, ooh, like, let the light bouncing around. Let's go for it, go for it. And I know where we can go. So this is back to that confidence thing I said I don't always have. In this case, I'm like, this is it. This is going to be like all time. And I just know, and I need to get the person on board with that, and then do. Um, and this image is bugging me now because the color isn't right, but we're gonna get rid of it. Like, I can't handle looking at it, I want to go fix it. But you can see with this kind of thing, like where I'm brightening the exposure, it's really delicate, because some people are like, will be like, you went too high key, or you can't really see your shoulders enough, or but that's trusting your gut in post-production as well, and just knowing like, well, what do you like? I mean, it's very different. If we were to put one of these images up, let's say in line with like this, like, the density of the picture is like crazy different. But to me, it still feels like one of mine. This is an image I haven't shown, but that's another one. But that's a different color palette, right? Like, that's
Mhm.
much more muted. This one has some warmth to it. So I got a little bit of warmth, and I like the warm and of the skin tone, but also it feels very bright and white. And so the reason I wanted to share this one was just that great images can be made anywhere. You don't need fancy stuff. It's, again, the same thing I've been talking about. And then maybe with this, I want to jump to probably one more narrative after it, but I want to give you a chance to ask questions, or if there are questions. But I've been forgetting to solicit people if they have questions, or if you have thoughts or reflections or anything like that. Hit me, Derek. What's happening?
This is one of my all-time favorite images of yours. So it's funny to hear that she was like, "Wait, what are you doing? You're
Oh
crazy."
my
It's
gosh, yeah.
just, it's like, that's the little things that it's confidence inspiring to people,
Yes.
where you can take something and it's like, again, we say, I say, you say it, I embodied it, that I embody it, that I just take these boring, regular, like, portraits, and you're over here like, no, in a parking lot, no, I'd be trying to like make it environmental, and this clearly you elevated. Like, you took May in your head, it's like, yeah, just a regular straight up portrait. But knowing where it took place, I thought this
Yeah.
was like studio, or you had like, hey, you just had
Yeah.
like a white backdrop or something. It's like,
Yeah.
just hearing that, like, the setting and the story behind it, it's inspiring, because these are images that you really can create anywhere. It just takes the brain power and the creative vision and foresight and the
Totally.
experience sometimes to
Yeah.
just know, like, hey, I could pull this off, and I'm gonna pull it off. And then I love your post processing. Like, you just have, like, you have a style.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's all your own. Like, I see your images and I'm like, yeah, this is Chris.
It's Orwig. Yeah. And why I'm laughing too is I did a photo walk, and I walked through this parking lot with the photo walk, and I was telling people like, I want to show you this one area where I capture one of my favorite images. And we walked through the parking lot, and I'll text you a photo of it next time I walk by it, because I'm down there all the time. It's just like a random place. But no one took pictures there. They were like, they were like, I don't understand why you like this spot. I'm like, you guys like the white wall and then the other white wall, and they like couldn't get it. They just wouldn't do it, and they just like, all of them blazed through the parking lot. And I was like, huh. Like, I tried. I thought I convinced them. I thought I told them, like, but it what. And that's maybe the value of those photo walk things is that I think a lot of us in photography, like this is it's the most ordinary thing in the world, right? And parking lot, they're everywhere. Like you can find white wall parking lots everywhere. Like go to like CVS or a drugstore, grocery store. There's a lot of white walls and there's a lot of parking lots, and it's like pretty easy. Um, and and they were almost wanted something cooler, and because there's all this other cool stuff around, and so they like cool textures and colors and all that. And so I guess for me, and this is I'm like, photo, how do you mentor me? Like if I ask this picture and it's like, Chris, don't underestimate simplicity. Like simplicity, simple, simple, simple. Yes. And then two, trust your instinct, the inner light, whatever. And then three, like get the person there, like bring them with you, because what you're thinking, they're like, think you're a crazy person. And that's almost always when I do photos, they're like, what and why? And I don't really get this. So that reminds me to do that and have the guts to do that. Or even the Sean one, like have the guts to, like, I would have been so sad if I only had the far away photo of the surfer guy in the beginning. Have the guts. Like photography requires courage and guts, and it's like hard to do, and you got to do it. And sometimes it means asking people to take off their sunglasses. Sometimes it means getting in their space. Sometimes it means approaching strangers. Sometimes it means like, having them do something they don't want to do. Like maybe their jacket they love just looks horrible, and getting them to change it or whatever, but that stuff really, 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 really makes difference, and it leads to cool results.
Totally. And if we can, we did get a question in.
Yeah.
And a question from Raphael, who's joining us here on Zoom. And Raphael, I will let you know also, we do have a ton of archived content on our event space page. If you go over onto facebook.com/BH event space and look in the video section, or vimeo.com/BH event space, a lot of content there from Chris about creating intentional portraits, creating dynamic portraits,
gear, all the things,
authentic portraits, everything that Chris does best. But you asked the question, you're here now, so let's tackle it now. Raphael wants to know, how do you direct people when you're working with a portrait subject? Are you talking with them? Is your equipment set up? I know you'll probably get into your approach to when you pull the camera out and how you interact.
Yeah.
And then also, Raphael says, I assume you prefer natural light over flash photography. So let's talk a little bit about your portrait process before we close this whole thing out.
Yeah. I think, and there may be one more story if we have time for it, but so directing is asking questions, keeping it very conversational, and encouraging people in a natural, authentic way. I always ask them to take a breath. So I have them to take the breath at some point, take a breath, I ask them to close their eyes at some point. And then I get them, I try to talk with them about something that means something to them. So like on the far right, the one we were just talking about, in that case, I'm talking, just maybe do two quick stories. So in that, the one on the right, I'm asking her about where she's from, and she's from Russia, and I'm asking about her homeland and her life there and her family. And so I'm no longer is she random model. She's a human with a history and a past and dreams and visions. And she was telling me about where she wants to end up and the kind of town she wants to end up and all these different beautiful things. And so like you get a lot of that in the picture. The one on the left, we talked about the loss of his son and how do we continue to live when we've gone through something that difficult. And you get that sense of he's not repressing that, he's not hiding that, we're like, let's engage that. And so that's really the key, is engagement and questions.
Love it.
Do we do one more?
Oh, we totally do one more. Elizabeth just said this is the fastest hour. Elizabeth, I could not agree more. Every time we get Chris on, it's like I blink and the time's gone.
Love it. We're gonna do okay. You know me, Derek. I like doing crazy stuff. So we're gonna go crazy. We're gonna have some fun. So this next one is photographing Emily Fletcher. She's the founder of Ziva Meditation. And the reason I want to show this is just talk about like process. This maybe is back to that other question of directing and connecting, and then how photography leads to photography. And I'll explain what that means. But I show up in this case to photograph her, and her son isn't feeling well, and she's doing some hair and makeup, and so I like snap some photos of him, and he and I are hanging out and playing with cars and toys, and then he needed some mom time, so I get some photos of them, and then their dog was there, I get some photos of that. And there's other photos, but these are all part of the photo shoot. And what these kind of photos do is get what's that? Oh, go ahead. Oh,
No,
sorry.
oh, you good?
Yeah. I thought you
All
said
right.
something.
Oh,
Sorry.
no.
And I was just saying that even though I'm not like hired to do this, then I send them photos later, and there are all these other great ones. I'm not showing them here, but the point is, like, the subject isn't always just the subject. Photograph other things, and then you get to the subject, and then we did different photos, and I'm just kind of pulling a random set, but like some that are more kind of headshotty. And then she's like, "There's this abandoned bank in my building." She lives in Brooklyn and New York, and we go down to the abandoned bank, and I was picturing like an abandoned like Chase Bank or something like that, but this is the abandoned bank. And then we start just playing around there, and she's sitting on one railing, and this is with her looking up towards the window. And then this is the same exact spot. Now I just changed my position. So, and the reason I wanted to show these is just this idea of this adaptability again. And I'm kind of like, we did some like before and after, and here I'm kind of showing a little bit more process. And there's so many different kinds of images that can be made in scenarios like this. And then often when we do photography, like let's just say these kind of, images, doesn't really matter, but let's just maybe have a couple of those kind of images, then that often leads to different kind of work where it's like, okay, now we're down in Costa Rica and we're doing some stuff down there, and we're capturing stuff in a little hotel area, or that then we walk from the hotel down to the beach, and then her partner's there. And if anyone has a partner that's there, I'm always capturing photos with significant people in their lives, whatever it is, even if it's not quote part of the shoot. So really expanding, thinking about like, yes, there's the subject, but then other people. And Adam here, he uses this as the screensaver on his iPhone, or at least he did for a while. I don't know if he still does, but and he loves this photo. And so that is a great gift and connection. And just looking at how there's these different images, and all of these, there's a narrative and story, but maybe like kind of part of what I'm trying to kind of piece together here is that when we do photography, the beautiful thing about it is we make connections with people, and we're storytelling in different ways. And that can open up amazing doors and amazing ways to connect with people in different ways and in different locations. And the reason why I kind of wanted to end there, and maybe we'll end with our little sunsetty picture, is that the main goal for me in photography is not like the shot. It's not the image. It's that if I were to see the person the next day or the next week, the next month, the next year, that they would be grateful to see me. So I'm ultimately trying to encourage, trying to build up, trying to draw out good qualities in them and in the people I'm working with, and add value. Really, it's really like, I think portraiture is service. And when you bring service and kindness into it, that can lead to other things, versus if you're just like, I'm just here to get and nail the shot, and expanding that a little bit. So I think that's kind of a fun little ending, one shoot leading to another shoot, kind of a fun type of story. And there's other images I can share, but I think this is a good spot.
That's awesome. I love that. I didn't see it going there. And it's funny because I remember seeing the library images.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw the first 3 images. I never had that tie there. And again, this is why we do it.
Right.
I think it really just opening yourself up, providing yourself options. Do the stuff you didn't want to do. Do the stuff you weren't sure if it was going to work. What's the worst that happens? It doesn't work. And you either know, okay, didn't work, but I think there's still something there, or maybe it wasn't the right person. Or at the end of the day, it's experience. And I think everything that you've talked about, everything you've shown us, has some aspect of experience playing a role in it. You know,
Yeah.
whether it's experience to know that, okay, this isn't it, I got to keep going, because there's no magic button that says you got the shot, move on to the next, or
Yeah.
you're done here. That's we have that
Right.
ingrained in us. And I think only with experience and time do we start to hone that to where
Mm.
it's less of a, do I have it? Like nobody likes going home and you're like, I hope I got something, you know, or it's like, oh, I just missed it. I had it and then I was off, you know. It's going
Yeah.
back to that immersion versus stepping back and saying, okay, now where do I go from here? So
Yeah. Yeah, and really, and remembering, maybe if like my hope, my big takeaway, I hope, is for folks listening, is just like, if we look at a set of photos, and again, I could have picked so many different sets of images, but these are, for whatever reason, for today, the ones I picked. We kind of think like, okay, wow, that's neat, but realizing there's process behind it, and there's work behind it, and there's craft, and there's art, and that's the beautiful thing about photography, is that you can find, when you find your own voice and you get to follow those threads and you get to go through that process, it can lead to connecting with people in wonderful ways. That last image was really about like building great connections that are lasting. Like Emily is someone who has had a huge impact on my life. Sean as well. I mean, Sean has had such an impact. This guy, even though we only met once as well. I mean, all the people I'm working with, they there's a chance for them to enrich our lives, and so for me, just keeping that in mind. And I would say the same thing is true whether we're photographing people or we're photographing landscapes, is allowing, like, the reason why photography is so amazing isn't just the photograph, it's how it changes who we are, how it changes how we see, how it helps us to become more creative, how it helps me to become a better father, a better husband, a better writer, a better teacher, a better all these different things. And that's really the beauty of it all. And what I was hoping to share today, and encourage people too, that if you're feeling like, if your process isn't quite there and you're kind of stuck with the images, whatever the example is, maybe it's more like this. If you're stuck on the first two steps, that's fine. Like, just keep at it. And that's the beauty of this. Photography is an iterative form of creativity, which, what I mean by that, very, very, very few people get it right on the first shot. It's a process. And even if you're a studio photographer, there's a process of building that set and doing this and testing it and finding it and fine-tuning it and finally getting there. And even in that, there's a process. And natural light, there's a different kind of process. And landscape, there's a different kind of process. So embrace that process. It's an essential part of the mix.
wow, always gems, always wisdom. And it's not just blowing smoke. It's like every time you come on, you wouldn't possibly think, as much as we have deep conversations, you think at a certain point we reach the bottom of the well, and it never happens. It's always something more, and there's always something there, and it all relates to life. I love
Yeah.
you said that beautifully, and I think that's one of the reasons why we get along so well, is we have such a similar outlook on photography. It's deeper than photography. It's about you as a person. It's about how you parent. It's about how you see the world. It's about shaping your views, and really you're seeing people and helping to show people in their best light, or in a way that they've never been captured before. And I think that you can do so much with photography if you just take it for what it is, but also look for what else it can offer you. And I think you summed that all up beautifully. I don't want to throw dirt on your words there, because they were so perfect.
You could
Everybody
never
go
do
back,
that.
just roll back to everybody, just roll back like 2 minutes and listen there. But Chris, it's always awesome having you on, man, for real.
Likewise.
It's zen like. It was great to look into your images in a different way. We've heard you talk about your images before, but not, I think it's usually in a more technical sense of teaching, rather than, really going into like, hey, I'm not trying to teach you anything. Here's what happened. Here's what my thought process was.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I love that.
Love it, man. Fun to talk stories, fun to share.
Always.
And,
Always good, man.
appreciate-
It's always great having you on. I already know where we're going for our next conversation. I have, it's like every time we talk, I'm like, you trigger something, and I'm like, ooh, I gotta hear Chris's thoughts.
I just can't
on
wait
that,
till we
so
do our live workshop together.
It's coming. It's
We're
the
doing it
build.
someday.
The build up is gonna be worth the
Yeah.
actual event when it happens. So
Yeah.
again, everybody, we'll make it happen one day. I don't know whether it's gonna be in New York or Santa Barbara or maybe someplace completely random like Texas. Who knows? But we will make it happen.
Or maybe we'll just go to an empty parking lot and we'll find.
Oh my God, yeah. Show me the ways. Well, Chris, huge thank you again. Obviously, wonderful. Thank you to Sony for hosting this wonderful event. I ran out of adjectives here. And to all of our English major, go figure. To all of our viewers who stick with me and my limited vocabulary, we do this for you guys. We do have another workshop coming up in just about 45 minutes. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be another great one, but that's all we got for now. We'll see you back here in 45 minutes, but another edition of B&H Virtual Event Space is in the books. Catch you all next time.